third and five defense, and he's crossing the 50-yard line. He has no one to the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Otterbein!
Good snap, good hold. The kick is up from Gaither, and it is good. Takes the give to Rudolph. Sizemore throwing off his back foot. And what a catch by Bryson Ray! Oh my goodness!
Live from the studios at 33 College View, it's time for the Tim Doup Coaches Show on 97.5 WOBN. Now, here's your host, David Kinder.
Good afternoon and welcome into the studios for the Week 9 edition of the Tim Doup Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. I'm your host, David Kinder. Well, Otterbein this past Saturday lost to the number 3 team in all of Division III college football, the Mount Union Purple Raiders, 66-7, and the Cardinal losing streak over Mount Union goes to 37 games. With the loss, Otterbein now sits 5-3 overall and is tied for third place in the Ohio Athletic Conference. Joining me in studio this week, head football coach Tim Doup and senior defensive end from Gahanna-Lincoln, Evan Bergenstein, who has 24 tackles this year, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks on the season. Evan, we all know it was a tough loss. We all know what a strong team that Mount Union is and what they've been for the past 2 decades now. How do you guys as a team move on from this loss and focus on next week's opponent?
I think there's definitely some things that we need to improve on as far as the game went, especially defensively. Definitely tackling. We've struggled with that all season. Mount was obviously a tough loss. They beat us pretty good, but first quarter we played with them. It was a tie ball game going in the second quarter. I think if the offense could control the ball a little bit more, time of possession, and just control the ball, I think the defense could play with them. So there's definitely some things that we need to take away from the game and get better as a team.
Coach, Evan just mentioned it at the end of the first period in the game, all tied up at 7 each. What was the feeling like on the sideline going into the second quarter?
Well, I told, going into the game, I told them, in order to play with Mount Union, you've either got to be up 7, tied, or down 7 after the first quarter. You can't get OAC ambushed and be down 21-0, 28-0, and we were right there. And I actually ran over to the defense when the offense was on the field, and I told everybody when they were on the bench, hey, look over at the scoreboard. We're right where we want to be. I thought we were in a good position.
Evan, looking at the defensive side of the ball first, their first drive of the game, they move the ball all the way down to the Otterbein 31-yard line. They're faced with a 4th down and short. They decide to go for it. Their All-American quarterback, Kevin Burke, runs a quarterback draw. You guys get great pressure on him. Preston Pearson stops him for a turnover on down. What was the momentum swing after that big stop?
It was a big deal, especially against a team like Mount. On the day they were 0 for 2 on 4th down. We shut them down on 4th down. That was a great feeling, actually.
Kevin Burke, while statistically he looks sound, had one of his worst passing days of the season. I know it sounds like a high number, but only 202 yards, second fewest all year. And coming into the game, he had only been sacked 4 times all year. The front 7 is able to get to him 3 times in this game, one of them coming from you. How are you guys able to get so much pressure on such a talented offensive line and quarterback?
We were focused all week on pass rush. We knew it was a big component of their game. Obviously, a lot of film study goes in when you play a team like Mount, but I don't think the score necessarily reflected our preparation for them, because against a team like Mount, there's 11 guys on the field. If one guy makes a mistake, they're going to find that and exploit you immediately.
The defense did struggle against the rush, giving up 351 yards, a season high against Otterbein. Their starting running back, Bradley Mitchell, carried for an 87-yard touchdown on Mount Union's first touchdown on their first play of their second drive. What was the breakdown on that play?
Like I said, it's just if one person doesn't do their job, Mount's going to find that and they're going to exploit you.
Did the defense feel deflated after giving up the long run after stopping them on 4th down the first drive?
That's relates more to personal preferences. As a defense, I think we were fine, but as far as team morale goes, that one, it was a dagger.
Things got away from Otterbein in the second quarter, giving up 31 unanswered points. Do you remember at any point in the first half that it started to feel like the game was getting away from Otterbein and you couldn't get back into it?
Not the first half. Not particularly the first half. At halftime, anything can happen any given Saturday, any given Sunday. At halftime, depends on how the team comes out, plays the second half, regardless of whether you're winning or losing. So.
Last week on the program, Coach Doup and receiver Travis Laird told us that this game feels like just all the other 9 games. And going into it, did you treat it any differently than the other games?
Not a bit. It's just another OAC game.
Coach, we talked about the defensive woes, but the offense struggled as well. First, let's talk about the touchdown, though. Otterbein scored against Mount Union for the first time since 2010. Back then, it was a quarterback who scored the touchdown, and Austin Schlosser on a run. This time, it was another quarterback. Brick Davis gets it on a 4-yard run. It looked like a designed pass, and he was booting out towards the far sideline, and Davis just realized he had an opening to the end zone. Is that what it was?
It's designed. It's purely designed as run throw. We're going to put the defense in a bad situation. So that is designed. If the receivers do what they're supposed to and the D-backs go, then he's supposed to run it in. So, yeah, that was purely designed.
The touchdown was set up by a very bad punt from Mount Union's punter, Edward Runke, on their own 30-yard line. He punts it. The punt goes straight up in the air, comes straight down, and bounces 5 yards back for a net of -5 yards. You've been spent a lot of time in football. You ever seen a punt go backwards before?
Yeah, actually I have. It happened to us up there 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I knew the wind. Once the wind changed, it was gonna, and that's part of it. The kicking game is huge, and we just couldn't get out of that end of the end zone once we got the wind in our face.
We talked last week about how you wanted to keep a similar game plan going into this game, but before the game, we learned that sophomore running back Reed Hutchinson, who was the team's leading rusher, almost 700 yards, was out for the game and is probably going to miss the rest of the season. Did his injury change the game plan at all?
No, I mean, we've still got running backs. It didn't change at all. We do what we do. I mean, we've done what we've got done to get us those 5 wins and, scoring and doing things like that offensively. Nothing changed because of personnel.
As we said, going into the end of the first quarter, all tied up at 7, they get 31 unanswered points in the second quarter. Did you feel like there was a time that the game got away from Otterbein?
Well, a little bit, only to the point to where when you fumble a ball, when you fumble and give it the ball to them, I think it was on the 25-yard line. You can't do that, short field. And then we threw a pick 6, same spot almost, and they returned that. You just felt a little bit like, oh, no, here we go. What things that I said going in could not happen. You can't turn the ball over. You can't throw a pick 6. Defense is being put in bad spots because if you looked at it, I bet you in the second quarter their average starting field position had to be like the 35-yard line going in. Because you go to punt, ball doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it was just you can feel a little bit snowballing, and like I've told everybody, I'm like, it's 7-7. Next thing I look up, it's 38-7. Just like that. And that's what can't happen. Offense wasn't getting first downs. You're trying to punt against the wind, giving them great field position. They're good enough as it is. You can't give them anything else.
Just 11 yards rushing in the game on 25 carries. Do you blame most of that on the running backs, or does it go on the offensive line, or is it a combination of both?
They're better than us up front, period. I mean, that's just the way it is. Their D linemen were better than our O line. And, that's just being very truthful. We can get no movement. Our backs had nowhere to go. The backs really had nothing to do with it, to be honest. They were just better than us up front.
Up 31-7 before the half. They use a couple of timeouts to make sure they get the ball back in the first half. And then in the second half, they end up running a fake field goal, and they keep their starting lineup until about halfway through the fourth quarter. Did you feel like Coach Carr's team was running the score up a little bit?
I don't think so. I mean, Vince and I have a really good relationship. I don't think so. I think he's just working on stuff and getting, doing what he does. I don't think he wasn't throwing the ball a lot. Probably, maybe to get a first down or here and there, but he was mostly running and just letting his other guys get work. I don't think, like I said, there's coaches that don't get along in this conference. But I think Vince and I are fine, and I don't think he was doing anything, that bad. The fake field goal did throw me for a loop for a second. I would have never expected that, but, it is what it is. Got the first down and maybe wanted it on film, for future. So I don't know.
Special teams in a game like this is kind of hard to judge, given the final score and the wind and how much of a factor it played in. Keaton was asked to punt 10 times, averaged just 29 yards a kick, but often had to punt into the wind. You only had to kick off twice. Both kickoffs did manage to stay in bounds. We mentioned the fake field goal from Mount Union, and then Mount Union goes to kick off in the start of the second half, and the ball goes to about midfield, and it looks like the return team was just waiting for Mount to down it like a punt, but of course it's a live ball. Mount Union fell on it and recovered around midfield. So what was the grade for the special teams?
Well, we were okay. I mean, I think we got 5 out of 10, which, it needs to be better. But, that kickoff, literally, I mean, I don't think he meant to do that.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to pooch it over our second line and just, get it there. But, our front line literally turned their backs and started running because that's what you're supposed to do is once the ball's kicked, take off. That thing just got in the wind and just sat there and came down. And, Austin Jones did attempt a fair catch. It was very quick. But it went 10 yards, and Bryson Ray, dove over top of the pile to grab it because he knew something wasn't right, and it just bounced off his hand right back to the kicker. So, like I said, just unfortunate. That I've never seen that before, to be honest. I've never seen a kickoff go straight up in the air like that and hang and come back down in front of your front line when they're sprinting back. It was just something I've never seen.
A whole lot of weird things in that game because of the strong winds. 66-7, the final score. Mount Union remains undefeated on the season. Otterbein now 5-3 overall, 5-2 in Ohio Athletic Conference play. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, though, we'll have the scouting report on another undefeated team, the Blue Streaks of John Carroll, and we'll get Coach and Evan's opinions on what Otterbein needs to do to get the victory. You're listening to the Tim Doup Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. We'll be right back after this.
Fewer than 5 out of 100 people give blood. Ever wonder why they do it?
It's the one thing that we can do that we can always afford to do, and hey, you get a snack afterwards. So
snacks are great. I had never knew my blood type, and I found out in doing this that I'm O negative, so there's that added pressure knowing that everyone can use my blood at any time, and so I feel like it's my responsibility.
It's a little extra bragging power, too, knowing that you're a universal giver.
Yeah, I'm pretty special.
Call 1-800-RED-CROSS or visit redcrossblood.org to make an appointment today.
Hi, I'm Junior Center Grant Knoppenberger. You're listening to the Tim Doup Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. Miss anything from today's episode, you can listen to every show on WOBN's YouTube page.
Hey Cardinal fans, Otterbein Athletics on the Radio is brought to you in part by Westerville Automotive. Serving the Westerville area for 20 years, they have 2 locations on Westerville Road and in the Uptown area, just seconds away from Otterbein on Main Street. They're on the web at westervilleautomotive.com. You can follow them on Facebook at Westerville Automotive Uptown or call them at 614-890-6700.
I used to be one of those irresponsible guys, always goofing off and acting like a real jerk. Girls wouldn't give me the time of day. Hey, Julie, do you have the time?
Shut up.
Then, 30 days before my 18th birthday, I went down to my local post office and registered with Selective Service overnight. I became aware of the man I had suddenly become, eligible for federal student loans, government jobs, and job training, responsible and mature. Hi, Julie. Dinner tonight?
I'd love to, Brad.
So register with Selective Service. It's what a man's gotta do.
These are the sounds of someone taking their eyes off the road. Texting while driving is more than distracting. It's dangerous. Do yourself a favor. Do us all a favor. When you're on the road, stay off the phone. A message from CTIA, America's Wireless Companies, and the National Safety Council.
Welcome back to the Tim Doup Coaches Show. I'm David Kinder. In studio with me, senior defensive end Evan Bergenstein and head football coach Tim Doup. And, well, they had a tough task last week, and it doesn't get any easier this week as they will go for back-to-back games against top 10 team ranks in Division III college football. This week's opponent will be the John Carroll Blue Streaks, who come into the game undefeated, 8-0, ranked 6th in the nation. Coach Doup, I suppose I might ask, are you a little bit upset that the schedule happened to work out this way, that your two toughest games of the year are scheduled back-to-back like this?
No, I mean, it's just the way it falls. You know, I have no control over it. You got to play everybody at some point anyway. So, I mean, it really – the schedule to me really doesn't bother me. I mean, it's just the way it fell, and we played two teams that are very good back-to-back. So we just got to prepare and get ready to go.
As I said, they are undefeated, as is Mount Union. Both are tied for first place in the OAC right now. BW and Mount will play this Saturday, a game you imagine that Mount Union will win. So if both teams win Saturday, which obviously we hope that they don't, next Saturday's matchup would be a de facto OAC championship game. Knowing Coach Tom Arth, do you think there's any chance his Blue Streaks might be overlooking this game, looking forward to Mount?
I don't think so. I mean, Tom does a good job. I think they're going to be very focused on the job at hand, and I think they should treat our game as a big game, because if they don't, anything can happen. So I think he's going to have them really focused and ready to play.
Evan, being a senior, you've played against JCU 3 previous times. You guys faced a great quarterback last week in Kevin Burke, and this week's passer is just as good or even better in Mark Myers, a transfer from Pittsburgh. He's more of a pro-style quarterback than Kevin Burke is. He isn't a guy that's going to run with the ball, but he leads the OAC in passing average per game, 285 a game. He also has 27 passing touchdowns, just 1 interception so far this year. Would you say that he's the most talented player that you have as a defender has gone up against this year?
Well, as I said, I've yet to go up against him, but as far as statistics go and being a complete quarterback, I think Kevin Burke's a little bit tougher than he is. But as far as being just a, like you said, pro-style quarterback, pocket passer, he's better for the job. But all around, I think Kevin Burke may be a little bit better. From
playing against JCU in the past few years and any film that you've watched so far of them this year, what can we expect to see them run Saturday offensively?
Well, they run a lot of different formations. They like their tight ends a lot. Quarterback and tight end went to high school together, so there's a pretty solid connection for them right there. They run a lot of power. They have scat backs, some guys that can move pretty well, but just a lot of different formations. They like to disguise and do a lot of the same things out of different formations.
Myers has a very good offensive line in front of him. He's only been sacked 3 times this year, best in the OAC. The Cardinal front 7 has gotten to the quarterback 30 times this year, also most in the league on the defensive side of the ball. So something has to give in this game on Saturday. How important it will be to keep pressure on him and force him to either run or make a bad pass?
Well, as you said earlier, he's more of a pro-style pocket passer, so he's not the kind of guy that wants to take off and run for yards. But I'm very confident with our defensive line and our linebackers and getting pressure on the quarterback. That's something that we've done well all year. Nothing's going to change. We're going to work hard on it in practice this week. We'll see what happens on Saturday.
While we mentioned they're a strong passing team, it's not a gimmick offense that neglects the run. Their senior running back, Tommy Michaels, is averaging over 100 yards a game, 3rd most in the conference. How does the defensive line practice staying disciplined to try to get to Myers as much as they can while also focusing on defending the rush?
This basically goes into everybody doing their job. There's 11 guys on the field. If everybody does their 1/11, things should take care of themselves. Whether that's a run, whether that's a pass, everybody just needs to do their job. Things will take care of themselves.
On the outsides, they have 2 of the best receivers in the league, and Amaris Greenwood and Marshall Howe. Both are in the top 5 in OAC in yards per game. Both have 9 receiving touchdowns this year as well. With a secondary that's a little banged up like Otterbeins, what's the game plan to try to stop them?
Get after the quarterback immediately. That's what we have to do.
Spoken like a true defensive lineman.
That's the only thing to do.
Coach, you've seen your share of very good quarterbacks this year, including Kevin Burke last year, Michael Meese of Heidelberg, and in week 1, Tyler Fenty of St. John Fisher, all very talented quarterbacks. Would you say that Myers is the best passer of them all?
There's no doubt. Myers is Mark Myers. I almost said Michael Myers. Been watching Freak Week all for Halloween. But, yeah, I mean, he's the best pure passer I think we've seen. He might be one of the best, in the country, to be honest. I mean, he's tall, got a great arm. As far as being a pure pocket passer, I think he's the best. But the one thing, is he doesn't scramble like Kevin Burke does. So, Kevin is just a different kind of athlete. Can throw the ball pretty well, but he also uses his feet a lot more than Myers does.
Taking a look at how the offense is going to line up with the defense, what can we expect to see out of them defensively that might give Otterbein some troubles?
Well, they like to go a lot of man-to-man on your receivers. That's what we've seen in film so far is a lot of man-to-man and a lot of bear front, which means they're going to almost cover up every offensive lineman. And they get to that in different ways, and they're always going to put one more in the box than you can block. That's basically what they're trying to do with their bear front. So it's hard to run the ball inside. They're trying to take away that inside run game because you're outnumbered. But, that's what we've seen the most, and that's what we're going to probably prepare for.
You mentioned the Bear defense. Is there any other team we've seen this year that runs a similar defense that would compare with it?
Not a lot. I mean, teams get in and out of Bear, but they don't run it as much as John Carroll does. John Carroll is using it as a staple. They're either a forefront or a bear front, and they're more bear.
Statistically, they're the league's top defense. They surrender on average less than a touchdown a game, only give up 195 yards of total offense. On the defensive side of the ball, is there any one player or a couple players that really stick out to you?
Well, they got a lot of guys back from last year. I mean, they were very good last year. Frank Pines, the defensive number 87. I mean, they put his hand on the ground. He stands up on the edge. He does a lot of good things. He's about 6'2", 250. He runs well. He's just a great football player. Kevin Cope, the inside linebacker that's back, he's about 5'11" or 6 foot 220. Was injured last year. Was all conference 2 years ago. So those two stand out to me a lot. I mean, they're very good. Two safeties that are both seniors. They've just got a lot of guys that they play together. Their defense is different than Mount's. They play together very well, and both defenses are very good, but they're just a little bit different.
Last week in the loss to Mount Union, we saw a pretty simple offensive attack as far as balanced is concerned. 23 rushing attempts, 29 passing attempts. Any chance we might see something different against JCU to surprise them?
No. There's just things you have to do to that defense. And I think we're going to add a couple little wrinkles to what they're doing, and hopefully take advantage to what they're doing. The cover 0 is cover 1 stuff. There's some things you need to do against that to be successful.
Last year, Otterbein lost to John Carroll up in University Heights, 28-0. Ben Sizemore and Brick Davis both played about the same amount of time in that game. Both had their struggles. Sizemore was sacked 3 times in that game. Brick Davis went down 4 times in that game. Davis didn't have a whole lot of time to throw the ball last week either. So how important will it be to keep the quarterback upright?
Well, I think it's huge. We're going to do some things pass protection wise, hopefully to help out in what we're doing. And, we've got to give our quarterback time to be successful. If we don't, we just won't be very successful, and that's going to come up to what we do up front. Can we accept the challenge up front and get the job done? And then that's what I fully expect.
Lastly, Coach, on the injury front, we saw Jordan Shell return from his injury last week. I thought played very well defending Mount Union's top receiver, Roman Namdar, holding him to just 25 yards. How has his injury progressed, and will he be okay Saturday?
He's good. He's ready to go. He made it through the game, so that's always a good sign. Sure, he'll be getting some rehab and stuff, but I think we're good. I think injury-wise we're all right. Evan sitting here, they thought he got hurt, but actually – he hurt his finger, but obviously he's going to play. And Greeny at nose banged up his knee a little bit, but I think he'll be fine. And, like you mentioned earlier, the tailback situation, he's just got a bummed shoulder, and we'll see what happens.
Any chance you think he could return to the field in the final 2 games of the year?
I would probably just put it out. Everybody's already going to know, probably doubtful.
Certainly disappointing news there, and we wish Reed the quickest of recoveries. Saturday's game will kick off from Don Shula Stadium in University Heights at 1:30. You can tune into the game for the pregame show right here on 97.5 WOBN, or if you can't listen in the Westerville area, on WOBN.net. Live coverage will start at 1 o'clock. Myself and Elijah Gonzalez will have the call. We're going to take our next break of the show, but when we come back, last Sunday, 2 of the game's greatest squared off in Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. When we come back from the break, we'll get Coach and Evan's thoughts on who is better and where they will rank in the all-time history books. You're listening to the Tim Doup Coaches Show on 97.5 WOBN. We'll be right back after this.
Football is a sport that unites fans, players, and coaches alike in a spirit of competition and camaraderie. Football season has come to our area, and while you're watching a game with friends or sharing in the excitement with family, be sure to celebrate responsibly. Never pick up the keys and drive if you've had too much to drink. And if you're 21, drinking alcohol is against the law. Remember, alcohol is different. Let's all work together to keep our roads and community safe and have a winning season.
Be sure to log on to WOBN.net for a complete broadcast schedule of music, talk shows, and sports. That's WOBN.net.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm fleece on a
I
cold
want to be
day.
a football
I want to
stadium.
be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Would your business survive a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
Can't make it to one of the football games this year? Well, WOBN has you covered with live broadcast of all 10 football games this year, home and away. Join us 30 minutes before kickoff for pregame and stay with us long after the final whistle for analysis and updates on what else happened in college football. It's all right here on 97.5 WOBN and streaming live anywhere in the world on WOBN.net. Welcome back to the final segment of today's Tim Doup Coaches Show. And we mentioned right before the break that we are going to get Coach and Evan's opinions on who some of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time are, because last Sunday, once again, New England Patriots, Tom Brady squared off against Peyton Manning of the Denver Broncos. This time, Brady got the best of him, 43-21, but truly one of the best individual rivalries out there, and people will debate who is the best until the end of football. While Manning holds most of the individual accomplishments, such as most NFL MVPs and the career record for passing touchdowns, it's Brady with 3 Super Bowls and an 18-8 career record in the playoffs. So our question, if you had to pick one to play on your team, who is it going to be? Coach, we'll start with you.
I'm a Peyton Manning fan, so I'd have to go with Peyton just because of his individual records and everything he's accomplished. I think when you look at him on the field, the way he directs, he's basically calling the show is what he's doing. And I just think, you know, with what he does, and he has had some good athletes to go with him, but I just like the way he does things. He's a no-nonsense guy, does his job, works very hard at it. And I'm sure Brady does the same thing. But I think Peyton Manning is going to go down as one of the best ever.
He's such a field general out there. Even when he was with the Colts and with the Broncos, he's always had good coaches, and Tony Dungy and Coach Fox. But I could really see him having a coaching career after he hangs up the shoulder pads too, because he's such a coach on the field.
Yeah, but you wonder, as long as he's been going, and depending on how much longer he goes, I have a feeling once he steps away, I think he's going to be done. Maybe become an analyst or something, but you can just tell. I think his football days will be over, and I don't even think he'll coach.
So he gets your nod in the rivalry between himself and Brady. Where does he rank among the greatest quarterbacks of all time for you?
I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be in the top 3. I mean, he could even be the number 1.
Who, if you said top 3, who would be the other one?
Well, I like Dan. I mean, Dan Marino did some great things back in the day. Yeah, I mean, there's so many out there. I mean, geez, Joe Montana. I mean, you can go back forever, but just from pure breaking records, I mean, he would probably be number one.
Evan, you told me in the break that it's hard for you to root for Tom Brady as a big Ohio State fan like myself. Being a guy from Michigan, sometimes it's hard to root for him. But if you were picking a team, obviously both you'd be very fortunate to have on your team as your quarterback. Who would you take, though, as your starting QB, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
I'm going to have to go with Coach Doup on this one, say Peyton Manning, just because of his individual accolades and the way that he does lead his team on the field. He's, like you said, you use the word general. There's no other word to describe him. Again, like you said, I'm biased because of Brady being a Michigan fan, I'm an Ohio State fan, and I don't think you can measure an individual quarterback on his amount of Super Bowls because that's a team thing.
So when it's all said and done, where does he rank for you among the greats?
No telling when it's all said and done because it's not all said and done yet, but I think, like Coach Doup said, he's going to be up there in the top 3, maybe top 5. But just like Coach Doup said as well, there's too many good quarterbacks to place him up there just yet. Obviously, individually, he's done a great job, but thinking about guys like Roger Staubach and Brett Favre, John Elway, Joe Montana, Steve Young, there's so many that you just can't place him anywhere yet.
It's an argument they're going to be having for a long time, and obviously we'll never have a definitive answer, but that's part of what makes it fun, getting to argue who it's going to be. Well, Coach Evan, thank you for joining us in the studio. We appreciate you spending some time with us and breaking down last week's game and previewing this week's game. We want to thank everyone for listening, and if you missed anything from today's show, you can listen to it in every episode on WOBN's YouTube page. We'll have live play-by-play coverage of Saturday's football game from JCU right here on WOBN. Myself and Elijah Gonzalez will have the call. Kickoff is at 1:30. The pregame show will start at 1 o'clock. For Coach Doup and senior defensive end Evan Bergenstein and everyone listening in, this is David Kinder saying so long. We'll talk to you on Saturday.